Welcome back to my channel. This is part 3 of He was a genius programmer who was reborn in another world and got a cheat system to get strong. You can watch the previous part on this channel. I put a link in the description below. Let's continue the story. The young man was taken aback by the immense size of the magical tower. It was incredibly large. This explained why the tower had been constructed outside the city. The Lord informed him that the distance between the city and the tower was not a significant concern for the mages. In the event of an enemy attack, they could easily teleport objects and prevent any magical experiments from affecting the city. As they reached the tower, they were greeted by a man who informed them that they had arrived just in time. The man looked at the young man and asked if he was Xiao-in. Xiao-in greeted the man and confirmed his identity. Xiao-in noticed a faint energy wave emanating from the man, indicating his magical abilities. The Lord bowed to the mage, stating that he would leave them. The mage did not object, and the Lord mounted his horse and wished Xiao-in success in his examination before departing. The mage then asked Xiao-in if he was ready to proceed to the magic tower. Xiao-in felt somewhat embarrassed but agreed to follow the mage. The mage mentioned that Xiao-in's teacher was already waiting for them inside the tower. Xiao-in was surprised to discover that the interior of the tower was even larger than its exterior. As they climbed the stairs, Xiao-in noticed that the mage remained silent, so he decided not to engage in conversation. On the second floor, Xiao-in observed numerous small rooms emitting magical waves, some of which were stronger than the accompanying mage. They continued upward and stopped on the 5th floor, where the mage knocked on a door. Xiao-in was excited to meet a genuine mage as the door opened, revealing a man gazing out the window. The mage who had accompanied Xiao-in introduced this man as the examiner for his upcoming test. Xiao-in realized that the man was the renowned magician Mo Lun and sensed his incredible magical power. Despite feeling immense pressure, Xiao-in maintained his composure and met Mo Lun's gaze. After examining Xiao-in, Mo Lun regretfully informed him that although he possessed magical talent, it was the lowest rank among all the mage disciples. Even with diligent practice, he would not be able to become an official mage. Mo Lun suggested that Xiao-in could stay in the outer forest of the magic tower, perform tasks, learn some spiritual power training methods, and gradually develop his abilities. When he reached adulthood, he would have the opportunity to comprehend novice magic, which would be sufficient for making a living. Xiao-in's spirits sank, and he stared sadly at the floor, unable to believe what he had just heard. He couldn't understand why the mage would say such discouraging things during their first meeting. Sitting down at the table, Mo Lun inquired about the person who had written the letter recommending Xiao-in's talent. Xiao-in replied that it was Knight Stockton who had written the letter. This piqued Mo Lun's interest, as he remarked that the knight was known for his honesty. He wondered how the knight could have deceived him with such a letter. Xiao-in then questioned the magician about how Knight Stockton had lied to him. Mo Lun responded that the knight had already written to him about Xiao-in's possession of magic. However, the grand magician became angry and warned him not to be deceived, emphasizing that his mental fortitude was too weak to comprehend magic with such a small talent. Xiao-in then demonstrated his talent by conjuring a wisp of wind into a bullet on his fingertip. Upon witnessing this, Mo Lun recognized that Xiao-in indeed knew how to use magic. Xiao-in clarified that he was only fluent in that particular spell. Mo Lun questioned if he knew any other spells, to which Xiao-in responded that he knew a few others but hadn't mastered them yet. Instead of practicing those spells, he spent most of his time sensing killing intent. Intrigued, Mo Lun approached Xiao-in to examine his spell more closely and realized that it was a wind magic spell. Satisfied, Xiao-in felt that he had caught the attention of the Grand Magician and confirmed that he had learned a wind magic spell called bullet magic. Mo Lun gestured for Xiao-in to use the spell on him, spicing up their interaction with the incident that had occurred on Xiao-in's way to Louis Castle. Xiao-in warned Mo Lun that the power of the shot could be lethal, but Mo Lun suggested that he test the spell on a table instead. After bowing to Mo Lun, Xiao-in expressed his readiness to begin. Mo Lun added a magical reinforcement to the table, cautioning Xiao-in about its solid wood construction. Before Mo Lun could finish speaking, Xiao-in fired a powerful shot from his finger, creating a small hole in the table. Mo Lun was stunned by the display and looked at Xiao-in in disbelief. After regaining his composure, Mo Lun remarked that the destructive power of the bullet magic Xiao-in demonstrated shouldn't have been so strong. Xiao-in couldn't disclose that the magic had been altered by artificial intelligence. Mo Lun inquired where Xiao En had learned the spell, and Xiao En presented a grimoire, explaining that his teacher was an artisan who told him it was a magic book. Mo Lun asked if Xiao En had learned what was written in the book himself, to which Xiao En claimed that he had self-taught himself. Mo Lun gave him a menacing look and accused him of lying. Xiao En defended himself, but Mo Lun sensed from the record book that it wasn't his bullet magic. Xiao En admitted that there was a slightly different spell in the book, but he had modified it to become bullet magic. Perplexed, Mo Lun asked how he had accomplished that, and Xiao En admitted that he didn't fully understand it himself. Xiao En then tried to explain how he had done it, but Mo Lun couldn't comprehend his explanation. The Grand Magician questioned why Xiao En had used the record book as a material to repair the magic weapon, to which Xiao En replied that he had thoroughly studied the records and used them for the repair. Mo Lun was shocked by the boy's reasonable explanation and couldn't counter it. The man asked the mage about his actions. The mage replied that everything was fine and expressed surprise at the young boy's courage. He asked the boy if he could use the spells again, to which the boy replied that he couldn't. The mage smiled, pleased with the boy's response. He mentioned that the boy's spiritual power was small and couldn't comprehend magic training. He questioned how the boy had learned magic despite his low spiritual power, as the boy's magic release skills were perfected as if he had practiced thousands of times. The boy became nervous and didn't know how to respond to the mage. The mage explained that when someone wants to use magic, they must visualize it in their mind and use their spiritual power to create a magical image and direct the energy flow. The mage stated that to master magic, one's mental spiritual power must exceed the power required to release magic by 10 or even 100 times. The mage acknowledged that the boy's bullet magic seemed to have formed instantly, which indicated a high level of skill that would typically take several years to achieve. The boy looked away, unsure of what to say. Mo Lun, realizing the interrogation was over, allowed the boy to stay in the magic tower, recognizing his talent. The mage then asked if the boy would be willing to be his apprentice. The boy eagerly agreed, expressing his strong desire to become the mage's apprentice. The mage accepted him as his official disciple and expressed hope that the boy would surprise him in the future. The boy promised not to disappoint the mage. The mage called the man who brought the boy, named Danny, and asked him to escort the boy to the 7th floor as his disciple. Danny asked the boy to follow him, and as they walked, the boy noticed Danny's increased politeness now that he was accepted as the mage's apprentice. They reached a room, and Danny asked if the boy was okay with staying there. The boy replied that he was fine with it. Danny informed the boy that he would be staying in that room from that day onwards and could ring the bell if he needed anything. The boy thanked Danny, who mentioned that he could be called Mr. Danny and explained that he was a simple assistant allowed to stay and study in the tower by Mr. Mo Lun. The boy was surprised, thinking that everyone in the tower was a mage. Mr. Danny revealed that the tower had 3 categories of members: mages, mage apprentices, and mage assistants. He mentioned that before the boy arrived, there were only 5 magician disciples in the Moon Magic Tower. They all possess exceptional magical talent, which led Mo Lun to recognize them and take them as disciples. Given time, they have the opportunity to become respected and admired official magicians. People like Danny, on the other hand, were chosen by magician Mo Lun as assistants. Although the assistants also have magical talent, their abilities are generally lower, which is why they became helpers who are often overlooked by the official mages. Assistants have 2 options: either give up studying magic and pursue another profession, or stay and retain a glimmer of hope, hoping to master magic and become official mages. However, very few assistants fulfill their wishes. Danny explained that the assistants live in the forest surrounding the magic tower. He added that there are few first-level magic spells and basic techniques for cultivating mental spirit power available in the forest. This shed light on why Mo Lun initially suggested that Xiao En live in the forest. Most mage assistants cannot bear to fail when they move to the 7th level of assistantship. After comprehending a first-level magic spell or perhaps 1 or 2 second-level magic spells, they tend to leave the forest. However, someone who has mastered a second-level spell is considered a mage in the eyes of the people. They have freedom and are essentially at the level of an apprentice mage. They can try their luck in various pursuits, such as joining the army, becoming mercenaries, or embarking on adventures. They will be highly regarded and respected. After finishing the story, Danny congratulated Xiao En on becoming the 6th mage apprentice in the Magic Tower. Danny explained that Xiao En could now hire people to be his assistants. When Xiao-in asked about the role of assistant mage apprentices, Danny replied that they would serve him and help with his daily tasks. They could also assist in preparing simple magic materials. Essentially, assistants are like servants. The boy laughed out of embarrassment. Danny mentioned that based on Xiao-in's credentials, he could hire 2 assistants, one of whom could be an acquaintance. Xiao-in was delighted to hear this and asked Danny if he had any acquaintances in mind. Xiao-in hesitated and replied that he didn't know whom to choose yet but would inform Danny of his decision later. For now, Danny could leave him alone in the room. The boy exhaled, relieved that he had finally entered the magic tower and become a magician's apprentice. He also realized that the world of mages was not without its injustices. Mo Lun arranged the books on the shelves and then performed some obscure magic. Afterward, the great magician set off somewhere, walking along the magic tower until he stopped and shouted loudly. Someone responded to Mo Lun's call, but the grand magician had no intention of waiting and created a magic circle beneath him, jumping up high. Upon landing on one of the floors, he was greeted by Du, a 3-star magician who had managed to get there in time. Du, speaking without sarcasm, asked Moon to join him at the table. Du mentioned that his servant had just brought him tea and milk, which made the grand magician envious because his own servant always brought him excellent things. Du then asked Moon what he was worried about. Moon choked on his tea in surprise and asked Du how he knew he was worried. Du laughed and said he could tell by the expression on Moon's face. Moon explained that he had accepted a disciple that day with extremely poor magical talent, the worst he had ever seen. Du was surprised and asked Moon why he had taken on someone with such poor talent as a disciple. He wondered if there was a familial connection between them, but then he remembered that Moon was an orphan. Moon's eyes welled up with tears at Du's words. The grand magician explained that he had taken the disciple in because, despite his poor talent, the young man had demonstrated a modified magic spell that had a much greater force than the original. This piqued Du's interest, and he asked Moon what kind of spell it was exactly. Moon replied that the young man called it bullet magic, and it had an explosive effect upon hitting its target. Du couldn't believe it and asked where the young man had learned this spell. Moon replied that he had learned it from a magic book and was self-taught. Du then inquired about the whereabouts of this magic book. Moon sadly explained that the young man had been a craftsman before and used the magic book to repair magical weapons. Moon added that the young man's magical power was only sufficient for casting the spell once, but he could use it instantly. Moon remarked that if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that a 10-year-old child with poor magical talent could comprehend magic at such a level. Du began to understand why Moon had sought him out and asked if it was really wise to let the young man use this kind of magic. A silence fell upon the table as the 2 magicians locked eyes. Moon stated that, given the young man's talent, he believed it was the most suitable path for him. Du warned Moon to consider carefully, as learning this type of magic wouldn't be beneficial if the young man couldn't become a real magician. Moon offered to discuss it with the young man. Meanwhile, Xiao-in lay on his bed contemplating whether he should inform Knight Doden that he had become a magician's apprentice. He wondered if Knight Doden already knew. Suddenly, he heard a voice instructing him to go up to the 9th floor. Intrigued, Xiao-in climbed to the 9th floor, where the voice had come from. When he arrived, he knocked on the door and was invited inside. Moon introduced a man standing beside him as his old friend, Du, a 3-star magician. Xiao-in respectfully bowed his head before the 3-star magician, and Du greeted him, surprised by how young he was. Du informed Xiao-in about what he had heard from Moon regarding the young man already mastering a magic spell. Xiao-in confirmed Moon's words. Du then asked Xiao-in to demonstrate the spell for him, and Xiao-in sought permission from his teacher, who granted it. Xiao-in began to gather air around his finger, compressing it into a bullet. He fired a shot, demonstrating the spell to Dai, who was impressed. Dai asked if Xiao-in knew any other magic spells, and Xiao-in replied that he also knew an acid spell but hadn't used it before, so he couldn't demonstrate it at the moment. Dai commented on Xiao-in's talent, noting that despite his limited magic power, there were very few people who could reach his level with that kind of power. The Grand Magician corrected Dai, stating that Xiao-in was truly unique. The Grand Magician advised Xiao-in not to mistake his potential and expressed appreciation for recognizing his talent. Mulan, Xiao-in's teacher, explained that since becoming his disciple, they had become a family. Xiao-in's talent for self-learning was commendable. Mulan warned Xiao-in to be prepared for the challenges he would face when using magic spells in the future. Xiao-in confidently stated that difficulties didn't scare him. The Grand Magician laughed and explained that there were many types of magic spells. He asked Xiao-in which type he planned to focus on. Xiao-in admitted that he wasn't very good at magic and requested Mulan's help. The Grand Magician marveled at Xiao-in's talent, recognizing his excellent perception and affinity for magic. He explained that Xiao-in's unique talent allowed him to comprehend magic easily, even with less magical power. Under the guidance of Mulan and the Grand Magician, Xiao-in began to understand certain aspects of magic. For example, the power of magic spells increases or decreases based on the amount of magical power used. Magic spells are divided into 10 levels, and even spells at the same level can differ in terms of magical power release. The Grand Magician advised Xiao-in to choose magic spells that consume less magical power, as it would be better for his future development. While reading a book, Xiao-in remembered Alice and realized that he didn't have any special abilities to learn if it weren't for her in the virtual space. He credited them for providing him with the opportunity to practice millions of times. Xiao-in asked the Grand Magician what type of magic he should study. After discussing it with Dai, the Grand Magician suggested summoning an element as a suitable option. He explained that among all types of magic, element summoning had powerful strength and the lowest consumption of magical energy. However, he noted that it was also widely recognized as the most difficult magic in the world, with its own set of conditions. Mulan explained that in order to learn the element summoning magic, a mage needed to have a high learning ability. The boy asked the Great Magician if he had also learned element summoning. Moon replied that he knew very little about element summoning magic. Da complimented the Great Magician's words, mentioning that Mulan had been studying element summoning magic for many years. Even after becoming a one-star magician, Mulan didn't dare claim to successfully use the element summoning spell. These words embarrassed the Great Mage. The boy felt a little scared about learning such a complicated spell. The Great Magician laughed and questioned where all his motivation had gone, asking if he really wanted to give up without even trying. Xiao-in replied that he was ready to start learning element summoning right away. Da added that the boy's talent was very unique, and he should learn this magic. The boy thanked Da for the support and promised not to disappoint them. Mulan brought a stack of magic books containing basic information and the fundamentals of element summoning magic. He handed the books to the boy, who struggled to hold the large stack but expressed gratitude to the Great Magician. Mulan assured the boy that element summoning magic was the most interesting spell because it involved many transformations. He promised that the boy would enjoy it. After explaining everything in detail, the Great Magician allowed the boy to go and study, offering assistance if he encountered any problems. Da advised the boy not to rely too much on them, as they didn't know much about this type of magic spell either. Da suggested that the boy should use his specialty, which confused the boy. The two mages laughed and explained that his specialty was self-learning. From that moment, Xiao-in embarked on his journey to become a mage, continuously practicing his morning exercises. With the help of Alice, he completed a complete set of beginner's exercises, allowing him to stop time for longer periods and have more time and energy to practice his mental power in the element summoning spell. A year had passed since the boy began his training in the magic tower. Sitting in his room, sipping tea, Xiao-in reflected on how he unexpectedly entered the magic tower and became a magician's apprentice. He was called by the Great Magician and, after finishing his tea, went to Mulan's room and knocked on the door. Upon entering, the Grand Magician asked to test his mental spirit power, running his hand over the boy's head. The Great Mage determined that his mental spirit power had improved, although it was still relatively weak. It had almost doubled since he first came to the Great Mage. The boy expressed gratitude to his teacher, but Mulan dismissed it, attributing the improvement to the boy's talent and hard training. After assessing the boy's mental fortitude strength, the Grand Mage inquired about the element summoning spell. The boy responded that he was still in the process of learning the spell. The Great Magician once again became convinced that element summoning magic was too complicated and confusing, as stated in the magic book. According to the book, element summoning magic originated in the ancient era when an alchemist, who had a deep understanding of magic, researched mechanics and other techniques. During his investigation of the structure of living beings, he couldn't find the material he desired. So, he decided to use a magical element as the material instead. Using powerful mental spirit power, he compressed the magic element and obtained the material. However, due to the peculiarity of the magic element, it had to be compressed all at once, or it would explode. But the most challenging aspect of element summoning magic was not the mental magic power, but rather the structure of the object itself. Xiao-in, with the assistance of Alice, attempted to memorize the structure's location, but it was a tedious and painful process. After numerous attempts, he discovered that the summoning element had its own compression feature. Even when two low-rank magics were mixed and compressed, they became as potent as a high-rank magic. However, to fully remember the steps, actions, and details required to successfully release the spell was an arduous and challenging task. It could be said that most ordinary individuals would not choose to study this magic due to its complexities. Fortunately, Xiao-in was not an ordinary individual, and with Alice's help, he could simplify things and take his time in the virtual space to learn any kind of magic. This unique feature allowed him to wield magic without relying on mental spirit power, making it seem effortless and without difficulties. Under Alice's guidance, he had already practiced the magic countless times. Unbeknownst to him, during this year, he had mastered 7 magic spells, all of which were first-level magic. However, his overall mental spirit and skill level were still too low for that level of mastery. If his teacher were to find out, it would shock the entire magic world. Among the 7 magics he had comprehended, the most powerful one was the altered element summoning spell. After numerous attempts, he managed to create an elemental summoning spell. Xiao-in was practicing in his room when Danny knocked on his door and asked him to come in. Upon entering, Danny apologized for the interruption. Xiao-in reassured him that it was fine and asked what was wrong. Danny took out an envelope from his pocket and informed Xiao-in that he had received a letter. The boy took the envelope in his hands and was delighted because it was from Knight Stockton. Opening the envelope, he wondered what could have happened since it had been a whole year. Xiao-in had previously instructed Danny to bring any letters from Knight Stockton as soon as they arrived. After reading the contents of the letter, Xiao-in informed Danny that he might have to leave the tower for a while. He asked Danny what he needed to do in order to leave. Danny replied that the boy simply needed to inform Mage Mulan. Danny handed Xiao-in a plate and asked him to wear it. Xiao-in inquired about the purpose of the plate, and Danny explained that it was a magical identification plate, similar to a token of the magic tower. The boy placed the plate on his chest as he left the magic tower, contemplating the fact that he hadn't stepped foot outside the tower in an entire year. The boy dashed towards Lewis Castle, racing down the road at an incredible speed. 3 travelers noticed him and were astounded by his velocity. Upon closer inspection, they realized he was a mage. Xia-in observed something peculiar and halted his own movement. The boy spotted the castle gate and approached it. The people in line willingly made way for him. As he reached the checkpoint, all eyes were fixed on him, causing him to feel self-conscious. The guards at the checkpoint greeted him, making him uncomfortable as he was not accustomed to such treatment from mages. However, his joyous smile faded from his face when he remembered that he had forgotten to bring money to pay the city tax. To his surprise, the guards informed him that as a mage, he was exempt from paying the tax. Grateful, the boy thanked the guards. After entering the castle grounds, the boy made his way to Uncle Butler's place, a bar within the castle. Inside, he spotted Butler behind the bar, who was pleased to see his arrival. The boy informed Butler that he had come to the castle at the request of Knight Stockton. Butler revealed that the knight had been present at the castle for an entire week. Together, Butler and the boy headed towards the knight's room. Upon reaching the room, Butler called out to the knight, who was in the midst of finishing a bottle of wine. The boy entered the room and greeted the knight, who couldn't believe that he had come to see him. Overwhelmed with joy, Stockton embraced the boy tightly, expressing how much he had missed him. The boy explained that he had come as soon as he read the letter, and upon seeing the knight's tears, he inquired about the reason for his distress. The knight asked the boy if he remembered the assassin from their previous encounter. The boy confirmed that he indeed remembered, as it was his first assassination attempt. The knight divulged that he had provoked a nobleman named Count Robin Lin, and a year ago, they had resolved the matter, assuming the earl had given up on acquiring the magic spell. However, the count had recently started causing trouble again. The boy asked about the nature of the count's problems. The knight revealed that Count Robin Lin had hired someone to threaten him into relinquishing the magic spell. The boy asked about the identity and strength of the hired magician's assistant. The knight sighed heavily, and the boy began to suspect who they were discussing. Hopelessly, Stockton explained that the Count had hired an assistant who had served as a 2-star magician's aide named Cradon for 20 years. Although the assistant's talent was average, and he had no hope of advancement, Cradon had completed his training as an assistant mage. Thoughtfully, the boy noted that despite being an assistant mage, he had studied magic for 2 decades. He then questioned the knight about the Count's intentions, wondering if he planned to use magic to kill Stockton. The Knight of Stockton responded by stating that the Count would never dare to make such an audacious move. Instead, he devised a cunning plan. The Count intended to force the magician's assistant he had brought along to engage in a magical duel against the boy. The Count aimed to settle the ownership of the magic spell through this duel. Butler interjected into the conversation between the knight and the boy, expressing his disapproval. He believed it was unjust for the Earl to employ a 20-year-old magician's assistant to intimidate a young magician's apprentice who had only been practicing magic for a year. The knight's mind was overwhelmed with the troubles surrounding him, and he contemplated passing on the magic spell as keeping it close to him proved to be a hindrance. Butler explained to the knight that Mage Trini held significant importance for their country and warned him to consider the consequences of angering such a powerful figure. Stockton cried out that he had no other choice, as he couldn't rely solely on the boy forever. Finally, the knight made the decision to hand over the magic spell to the Count. However, Xiao-In objected and declared that he would participate in the magic duel to protect the knight. The knight and Butler couldn't believe what they were hearing. The boy requested to go and inform the Count of his agreement to the magical duel. The following day, they visited the Count's house and were greeted by the guards stationed there who informed them that Count Robin Lin was already waiting inside. Upon entering the house, they encountered the Count and his magician's assistant. The knight and the boy bowed respectfully. Xiao-In had formed a completely different impression of Count Robin Lin, perceiving him as someone who would seize everything through force. A conversation ensued between the knight and the Count, while the magician's assistant and Xiao-In scrutinized each other. The boy analyzed his opponent and recognized that the mental strength of the assistant mage was indeed stronger than his own. The Count introduced the assistant mage, whose name was Di Lin. Di Lin greeted the boy, stating that he had completed the magic tower under Cradon's guidance. Xiao-In introduced himself, revealing that he had recently become Mage Moon's disciple at his magic tower. This revelation shocked Di Lin. When questioned by the Count about the matter, Di Lin responded that Xiao-In held a higher status than him. The boy dismissed the significance of their respective statuses. Subsequently, the 4 of them proceeded to the training arena. Di Lin approached Xiao-In with a proposal, piquing his interest. Upon arriving at the training ground, the Count suggested that the mages engage in a peaceful magic duel. Di Lin and Xiao-In agreed to the Count's proposal. The Count announced the start of the duel, leaving no room for escape. Di Lin suggested that Xiao-In take the first turn. The boy accepted the offer, perceiving that Di Lin wanted to gauge his true strength. Xiao-In took a deep breath, fully utilizing his lungs. Despite possessing 7 spells of the same level, his current magic power only allowed him to use 3. He decided to employ his best spell, bullet magic. With a precise shot, he shattered the dummy into splinters. Knight Stockton filled with hope upon witnessing the boy's proficient use of bullet magic. Observing the boy's spell, Di Lin hesitated and questioned whether Xiao-In had truly only studied magic for a year. The guy responded by affirming that it had indeed been exactly 1 year, and no more. Xiao-In suggested that Di Lin demonstrate his skills. Di Lin pointed his finger towards the dummy and infused magic into the wind sword. A powerful wave of wind surged towards the mannequin. The Count and the knight felt disheartened by what they witnessed. The guy pondered for a moment, considering the strength of the wind sword magic, which seemed more potent than bullet magic. However, he noted that bullet magic was an instantaneous attack, while wind sword magic took a few seconds to unleash. In a magic duel, Xiao-In would undoubtedly emerge as the victor. Curious about Di Lin's perspective, the guy wondered what he thought of the situation. Di Lin responded that this round ended in a draw. He asked Xiao-In if he agreed with this assessment. The guy didn't doubt that Di Lin would deny the reality, but he decided to accept the draw. The 2 magicians decided to have another round, and this time, Di Lin volunteered to go first. He extended his hands towards the dummy, allowing magic power to accumulate. After a couple of seconds, the dummy was engulfed in flames. Once again, the knight and the Count were taken aback by Di Lin's abilities. Di Lin eagerly awaited Xiao-In's response to his flame magic. Xiao-In praised Di Lin's abilities, acknowledging his strength. He then pointed his hand towards the dummy, displaying firmness and confidence in his eyes.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content. Feel free to leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts or suggestions. If you want to stay updated on all our latest uploads, click the notification bell icon. And hey, why not check out some of our other videos popping up on the screen right now? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really means a lot. Peace.